Welcome to the Honest Dog Breeder Podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan, where each week we dive in to discuss all things dog breeding so you can build a breeding business you love, producing dogs that fulfill their owners' dreams. I believe you can have an honest dog breeding program that also pays the bills. So throw those pods in your ears while you're cleaning kennels. I'd love to join you. Recently, I got into a lot of fights on social media. Okay, let's rephrase that. I got into a lot of discussions on social media. I made a post talking about honest breeders and how they are necessary because people will still want to buy puppies, even if all the honest breeders stop breeding. That's the part I think a lot of people miss. If honest breeders stop breeding, the demand for puppies does not magically disappear. People will still want dogs. Families will still want puppies. People will still want specific breeds, specific temperaments, specific sizes, coats, energy levels, and purposes, and different kinds of support. So if honest breeders disappear, one of two things happens. Either we eventually run out of the kind of dogs people are looking for, or people are forced to get puppies from less intentionally bred dogs or sources. In my opinion, neither of those is great. Today, I want to go through some of the arguments that were thrown at me and explain where I think they went wrong. My hope is that by the end of this episode, you will feel better about what you're doing as an honest breeder. I also hope you have some real answers to give people when you're challenged. But more than that, I want to share the bigger conclusion that I've come to. Because I think this conversation matters, not just because breeders are tired of being attacked online, but because if the people doing the most thoughtful, intentional, and responsible breeding are also the people being shamed on, priced out, or burned out, the dog world does not get better. It gets worse. By and large, the biggest misunderstanding I see with the adopt, don't shop movement is that it conflates two very different ideas. One is all dogs deserve love, and the other idea they mix up is that any dog will work for you. These are not the same thing. By merging these two ideas into one concept, the argument becomes something like this. Because all dogs deserve love, any dog should work for your family. Or any dog should work for any family. It sounds ridiculous when you say it out loud, but that is the core confusion. Then it gets extended even further to suggest that every puppy purchased from a breeder is one less puppy adopted from a rescue. And that simply is not the case. Think about your own puppies and your own ideal puppy buyer. There is a reason we develop an ideal puppy buyer to bring our dogs for. There is a reason we develop an ideal puppy buyer to breed our dogs for. It is not because we are trying to be fancy marketers. It is because we are trying to create long-term success for the dog and the family. The good match matters. Now, think about all the people out there who are not a good fit for your dogs. Maybe they are not active enough. Maybe they are too busy. Maybe their kids are still really young. Maybe they travel too much. Maybe they need a dog with a different level of drive or grooming needs, independence, sensitivity, sociability, training intensity. There's a lot of different things. Despite raising beautiful, healthy dogs who love people, your dogs are still not a good fit for the majority of people out there. And that's fine. That makes sense. What fits one person, one family, one lifestyle, or one dog is going to be different from what fits another in another family or another dog. That is not an insult to the dog. It is not an insult to the family. It's just the match. Now, let's add in the unknowns that come with a rescue dog. Potentially conflicted drives, unknown origin, multiple breeds we may never fully understand, possible trauma from neglect, unknown final size if the dog is still a puppy, unknown temperament as they mature, and unknown health history. Every unknown piece of the puzzle adds to the risk that what the owner gets. Every unknown piece of the puzzle adds to the risk that what the owner gets will be different from what the owner wanted, needed, or was prepared to handle. For many people, that is not an acceptable risk. And if their options are to either accept that level of risk or to not get a dog at all, many people will simply choose to not get a dog. Again, this is not because rescue dogs are not worthy of love. In all the years I've been doing this work, I have yet to meet a single person who truly believes some dogs do not deserve love. They do. They all do. They deserve a good life. But when we are trying to predict the right home, with all of those variables, it can be very hard to get that match right. Rescue and breeding are both important. One is not inherently better than the other. They serve different purposes. Dogs that already exist and are here deserve care, advocacy, and good homes. But future dogs, the ones that haven't been born yet, they also deserve to be bred, raised, and matched and supported with intention. These are not in conflict. We don't need to have rescues or breeders. We do need both. I remember one family who got a rat terrier from me and came back for a second one about 6 months later. And while they were standing in my kitchen waiting on that second puppy to be ready, they told me they wanted to get their first rat terrier a buddy. Originally, they thought another dog about the same size would be great. They were not too worried about what it was. Didn't matter the breed as long as it was a good buddy. But then they had a second thought. They had previously had to put a dog down that they had gotten from a shelter because it had attacked their other dog and caused multiple episodes at the emergency vet, along with thousands of dollars in bills. They realized it was not worth the risk for them. They would rather pay for another puppy and know what they were getting, and I understood that. They had grandchildren. There simply wasn't a lot of room for error here. Another piece that is really unfortunate is what happens with dogs who have been dealt a bad hand. Dogs who are a victim of abuse, neglect, or both. Dogs who, in response, develop fear, reactivity, or bite issues. Imagine the amount of work that goes into helping a dog like that. It's a lot of time, management, skill, and emotional energy. If it goes wrong, there can be a steep price to pay. Just because it is not the dog's fault that they are afraid and bite does not mean that the bite is not dangerous. That's the distinction we have to be mature enough to hold. Compassion does not mean pretending that this risk doesn't exist. We have to acknowledge the risk and people's capacity to deal with it. Another core misunderstanding among those who push the adopt, don't shop agenda is that they seem to believe breeders are the reason dogs are in shelters. So I decided to do a little research. Statistically speaking, less than 10% of dogs in shelters are purebred. The AKC released DNA-driven research that found only 3 to 5% of dogs in shelters came back as purebred. The ASPCA often says that 25 to 30% of shelter dogs are purebred, but that is generally based on shelter staff's best guess. Now, I know DNA testing companies are still working out some of their genetic kinks and figuring out what's what. For example, my purebred rat terrier came back as part American Hairless Terrier. It's a big chore for genetic companies to sort out what is actually the breed, and then what's an allele in the breed, and then how to interpret breeds that share the same ancestry, like the American Hairless Terrier and the rat terrier. So who knows? That study may have concluded that my rat terrier stud was a mutt. So we can take that 3 to 5% from the AKC study with a grain of salt. But even if we double it, that still puts us at less than 10% of shelter dogs being purebreds, which means roughly 90% of the dogs in shelters are not coming from intentional purebred breeding programs. They are coming from somewhere else. Unintentional breedings, stray populations, owner surrenders, casual breeding, or people who are not health testing, not raising puppies with intention, not setting buyers up for success, and not taking responsibility for the dogs that they produce. That is the real question to me. Where are these dogs actually coming from? Even puppy mills are usually breeding purebreds. And one other question, because I can't help but ask it. So many people who get a dog from a shelter are excited to do a DNA test to find out what their dog is and what breeds went into the dog. But if 2 purebred dogs have an oops litter, these puppies are 50-50, 2 different breeds, right? So if your dog has 4 breeds in them, doesn't that mean that there were at least 3 unintentional breedings to get to that dog? Some dogs are a whole handful of breeds. So how many oops litters does it take to create some of those dogs? Getting to the bottom of where these dogs are actually coming from would be helpful. If we want to solve the overpopulation problem in shelters, we need to understand what the problem stems from. So according to the ASPCA, around 60% of dogs enter shelters as strays. And another significant portion are owner surrenders, around 20 to 30%. Now that matters because if a dog comes into a shelter as a stray, then regulating breeders is unlikely to help. If these are owner surrenders, then we need to investigate the fit, the buyer's preparedness, and where the dog came from. Because when a breeder gets a dog returned, we have the responsibility to find out where the relationship between the dog and the buyer went sideways. so we can work to prevent that in the future. Interestingly, as a side note, when I'm in Mexico or Panama, I see a lot of stray dogs, and most of them look intact. A lot of those street dogs are surprisingly calm. They do not seem to suffer from anxiety in the same way many pets do here in the States. Many are comfortable sitting outside restaurants or shops, just sitting there as you pass by. The topic of how street dogs sometimes appear to have less anxiety than many other pet dogs would be a fascinating topic for another day. But that is not what this episode is for. The point is this. If we want to reduce the number of dogs in shelters, we have to be honest about where those dogs are coming from. And lumping honest breeders into the same category as every irresponsible source of puppies does not help us solve the actual problem. It just makes people feel morally superior while avoiding the harder questions. Next point is we will always want dogs in our lives as humans. Dogs are not going away. In fact, they are arguably more popular than children in some circles these days. So if we know we want dogs in the world and we do not actually want dogs to go extinct, then because we love dogs so much, shouldn't we want those dogs to be bred with health and temperament in mind? Shouldn't we want them to be raised with love and care in a clean, enjoyable environment with people who are showing them that humans are good and can be trusted? Seems like it. And if that is what we want, wouldn't the people giving dogs that start in life be honest breeders? If honest breeders are giving dogs the best start they can and placing them in homes where they will continue to be loved and cared for, shouldn't that be appreciated? Shouldn't that be respected? Shouldn't that be seen as an honest, skilled profession? This is where the money conversation starts to matter too. Shouldn't breeding be seen as honest, skilled, professional work? An honest profession? This is where the money conversation starts to matter too. If honest breeders are the people doing the health testing, making the careful breeding decisions, raising puppies with intention, matching them thoughtfully, educating buyers, taking dogs back, and supporting families long term, then we have to stop acting like those breeders should be the least supported people in the whole system. We cannot say we want dogs to be bred responsibly and then shame the responsible people out of charging enough to keep doing it. It just doesn't make sense. So when did all breeders get lumped together? When I was getting attacked, or let's say strongly engaged with, on Instagram and Facebook over my suggestion that honest breeders will always be needed, one thing became strikingly clear. A lot of people believe all breeders are the same. Some went so far as to say that as long as dogs are in shelters, all breeding should be banned. And I mean, tell that to the blind person waiting for a guide dog, the rancher looking for a cattle dog, the hobby farmer who wants a livestock guardian dog to protect his chickens, or the family who simply wants a dog to grow up with their children, one with a balanced temperament, a predictable size, and the right traits for their life. Now, I did get one very interesting comment. A woman did not really have an opinion on whether or not we should breed dogs, but rather that they should not exist because they are genetically modified. I tried to get some additional information on that one, but I did not have much luck. As far as I know, we are doing genetic selection, not shooting DNA into existing DNA in a lab. But who really knows what's happening in the basements of government buildings, right? One comment was refreshing, though. A woman said, "Wait, when was ethical breeding bad?" And honestly, it was nice to hear that someone still remembers there are good ones in addition to the bad. In my mind, there are quite a few groups of breeders. There are puppy mills. They place profit before the welfare of the dogs. There are backyard breeders. They often do not have the intentionality behind what they are doing. They may be under-researched, convenience-based, or simply not taking full responsibility for the outcomes. And then there are hobby breeders. And I want to be clear here because this can get a little touchy. I believe bringing puppies into the world requires intention, time, and focused attention. Hobby breeders seem to live in this little side world because they are small, infrequent, and genuinely care about their dogs. The problem is that sometimes they are so small and the breeding is such a small part of their lives that they can't dedicate the time required to the program that it deserves. If you're working 40 hours per week, running your kids around, and you don't have systems for buyer support and education in place, then how are you supposed to give your puppies and their future owners the best support and the best start? Now, it's not that it can't be done. People do it. But it gets to me when people describe it as a hobby. The dogs deserve more dedication than simply something you pick up on the side from time to time. And the problem happens when someone breeds so rarely, so casually, or with so little support that they never build the judgment, systems, buyer education, and follow-up that the puppies and families actually need. Sometimes having very few litters can mean less experience, less pattern recognition, less familiarity with what can go wrong, less practice supporting buyers through the transition, and less understanding of how temperament develops over time. It's sort of like asking whether you want the heart surgeon who does surgeries every week or the one who did one last year. Now, breeding is not heart surgery, obviously, but experience is important. Pattern recognition catches things early, and seeing enough situations to know what you were looking at does matter. Then there are ethical breeders. They do well by the dogs, take care of their adults and puppies, health test. They're thoughtful about their breedings. They care about the puppies. And that's a good start. But in my book, that is not the whole picture. Taking care of the breeding dogs and puppies is the tip of the iceberg. You also have to find them good homes, prepare and educate those families, support them when they have questions down the road, and be available to take the dog back if something happens. They also have to think through buyer fit and think through the dog's quality of life after it leaves your house. Those, to me, are the good breeders. They're taking care of the dogs and they're taking care of their buyers. And then we have the last category, the honest breeder. An honest breeder is not just someone who loves dogs. An honest breeder takes responsibility for the whole life cycle of the dog that they bring into the world. The breeding decision, the puppy raising, the buyer match, the education, the support, the take the dog back plan should it need to, and the sustainability of the program itself. I'm not talking about sustainability in the green movement sense. I'm talking about running the program with systems, intention, and reflection, and financial means. A breeder whose program is sustainable can consistently produce high-quality dogs, send them home to great families, care for the mental, physical, and emotional health of the breeding dogs, and do it in a way that does not burn the breeder out. That last part matters because if the program is not sustainable, eventually something breaks. The breeder burns out. The facilities do not improve. The wrong buyers get accepted. The dogs become harder to care for. The buyer support gets thinner. And then the breeder starts making decisions from pressure instead of clarity. And the work that started from love starts consuming the person doing it. That is not good for the breeder, but it is also not good for the dogs. This is why I care so much about honest breeders building businesses that actually work. If honest breeders disappear, demand for puppies does not disappear. It just moves towards less intentional sources. When honest breeders are shamed out, priced out, burned out, we do not magically create a world where nobody wants puppies. We create a world where the people most willing to take responsibility are the ones who leave, and the demand gets filled by people with fewer standards, fewer systems, and less accountability. That is not a better world for dogs. Honest dog breeding needs to be sustainable. We do not want dogs to go away. We love our dogs. People want good, happy, healthy dogs they can have a memorable life with. They want dogs that fit their homes, their kids, their activity level, their work schedule, their emotional capacity, and their future. Those dogs consistently come from honest breeders, and we should want them to. But if we want honest breeders to keep doing this work, we have to stop expecting them to run on sacrifice alone. We have to stop acting like the most responsible breeders should be the most financially strained. We have to stop treating profit as suspicious when the lack of profit is one of the things that makes good programs harder to sustain. Honest breeding is not just about producing puppies. It's about building a program that can support the dogs, the buyers, the breeder long enough to keep doing this work well. So if you are an honest breeder, I want you to stop shrinking from that. Stop letting the worst examples of breeding define the work you are trying to do. Stop believing that the responsible version of breeding should require you to undercharge, overgive, and burn yourself into the ground to prove you care. You are not wrong for wanting your program to work. You are not wrong for wanting the money side to support the responsibility that you're carrying. And you are not wrong for believing that good dogs raised with intention and placed in the right families still matter. They do. Honest breeders are necessary. And if we want more dogs to thrive, more owners to love the life their dogs bring them, and more breeders to keep doing this work with integrity, then honest breeding has to be respected as real work, skilled work, thoughtful work, professional work, and yes, sustainable work. This is also why I'm hosting Elevated Breeder. a live planning workshop for breeders who want to build more sustainable breeding programs. Because honest breeding does not keep going just because you care hard enough. It keeps going when the business behind the dogs is built to support the care, the buyer education, the matching process, the facilities, the breeder's capacity, and the whole responsibility you're carrying. We'll talk more about this over the next few weeks, but for now, I want you to start thinking about this. What would change in your breeding program if it were built to support the dogs, the buyers, and also you? Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Honest Dog Breeder Podcast with me, your host, Julie Swan. I can't wait to see you in the next episode. If you found this episode helpful, please tap that like button. It helps me better understand you and supports the channel. If you're a current or aspiring dog breeder, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel to be notified when new videos come out. Thanks.